now, we've been warning you about the looming energy crisis at home and abroad, which is threatening to have an enormous impact on our way of life. The basics are at risk, even heating your home, just having reliable and affordable energy. Even Bloomberg is reporting on the reality of our fragile energy crisis. A bigger threat to households than the 2008 global financial crisis, possibly triggering half of the British population into energy poverty. Joining me now is someone who knows plenty about the reality of our net zero renewables fallacy, Senator Matt Canavan. Matt, welcome to the program. Surely what I find just extraordinary with this entire story is that despite these dire warnings, despite what we are seeing happening in the UK and other parts of Europe, lefties in this country are pushing ahead with net zero policies.
Well, Rita, we are having a real-world example of the definition of insanity, which is, of course, keep doing the same thing and expect different results. European countries and many countries around the world, but Europe's been the furthest advanced, have installed large amounts of intermittent, unreliable solar and wind energy. And in every one of those nations, the consequence has been skyrocketing energy prices, households facing energy poverty, and manufacturing businesses going to the wall. That's happening on a daily basis right now. In the UK this week, a number of fertiliser and petrochemical companies have gone bust in Europe because of these high energy prices. And we're constantly told, no, renewables are the cheapest. The cheapest form of power is apparently solar and wind energy. But why can't anyone who says that point to one country? And as I say, this has been tried in a lot of nations now. We've been on this for about 20 years, two decades worth of experimentation. Why can't one of these advocates point to just one country where the installation of solar and wind has led to enormous reductions in power prices, free energy for everybody? It doesn't happen. The complete reverse happens. And I just hope that Australians wake up before we get too far down this European path, which poverty lays at the end of it.
Well, we have seen in Europe also the over-reliance on Russian gas and oil and how fragile these nations are when there's a conflict. And they've put all of their eggs in the renewable basket. And this is the impact. And at least for many of those European countries, they've got a little bit of relief from nuclear energy. We've got countries like France and Sweden and even the UK. That's something we don't have access to. So what sort of pricing are we going to see? What sort of reliability issues are we going to see if we keep going down this track? And Labor has got some very bold targets in place. If we're to achieve those targets, it's going to be quite a dramatic change to what we've known over the last few years.
Well, you're right, Rita, and there are some reasons to think it could even be worse here in Australia, because most European countries that have tried this experimentation are close to other European countries which may not have been as crazy, and so therefore they can import electricity. Now, as you say, they were doing that from Russia. We don't have that luxury here in Australia, of course. We're an island, a long way away from countries, but they were doing that with Russian gas. And now, you'll see now when some of these renewable energy advocates are pushed, they'll say, oh, well, this is all just because of Putin. It's not because of any inherent problem with solar and wind. Yet Vladimir Putin is just doing exactly what they've wanted. They want it to shut off the gas and coal and oil. They've been wanting to do that yesterday. And yes, he's done it for different reasons than wanting to save the climate, but this is the exact same consequence would occur if we shut off our coal, access to our coal and gas and oil, just as Putin has done for Europe. Now, as I say, here in this country, we're not connected to, say, Germany can usually get power from France with its nuclear energy, or from the North Sea oil, from oil and gas from Norway. We don't have those options here in Australia. If we stuff it up, we're on our own. We can't get gas from Indonesia. We can't get electricity from New Zealand. We can't even get electricity from Western Australia. They've been a bit saner over there in the west, but we don't even have that connected to the east coast of the country. It's a big country, and so we've got to get things right for ourselves, or else we will lose what's left of our manufacturing industry, and a lot of people will lose their jobs.
And Matt, the Daily Telegraph hosted the annual Bush Summit in Griffith today. Farmers wanting $2 billion bush bonanza. But the Prime Minister, who came to town for the summit, well, he's talking about what else but climate change.
When it comes to climate change, the message I delivered at the 2019 Bush Summit still stands. Anyone looking for a true understanding of climate change should look for it here. There is no ideological opt-out clause because farmers live with it.
And there was plenty more where that came from. What do you think? Is climate change at the forefront of the minds of farmers in regional Australia right now, Matt?
Well, I'm happy to give Anthony Albanese the scope to, let's assume that he's right, that is the biggest issue. What is he going to do about it? I mean, he can't. He's Prime Minister of Australia, but we account for just 1% of the world's emissions. China is expanding its coal mining by 300 million tonnes a year. India is doing about the same. That's more than we produce in a year. We can't solve those issues ourselves. So what answers has he got for farmers? Because what is facing farmers right now, two things I've heard recently from farmers, and don't know how often Anthony Albanese talks to them. One, there are enormous farming areas of farming properties being taken over by carbon credit farms or renewable energy projects. I was talking to some mayors in Western Queensland just last week who say that 40% of their council areas are now taken up, locked up, destocked, all the cattle gone, in some futile attempt to generate carbon credits. All the business goes then, the farmers are well paid, but there's no stock camps anymore, no truck drivers, no fencing contractors, and that reduces the businesses in country towns. And then likewise, the other big issue for farmers is costs. And one of the big reasons that costs are going up for farming and why your food is going up in your grocery shop is because we've locked off natural gas in the Western world. We are not producing the fertilisers that come from natural gas. So all these students that run around with placards saying you can't eat fossil fuels, they haven't studied chemistry yet in their high school lessons, because we do eat fossil fuels. Half of the world's food is produced from fertilisers that come from natural gas. And because we're short of those things, and as I said earlier, European fertilising companies going to the wall, fertiliser costs right around the world going up, that flows onto farmers, and then it's hard for them to pass those costs on, especially to big supermarkets like Coles and Woolies. Although that is happening, and you can see it, you can just see the consequences of climate change policies in your shopping trolley every week.
Matt Canavan, thank you so much for joining me tonight.